Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the sixth section of the Sustainable Insight. Firstly, I would like to introduce our organizing team from UNESCO Jakarta. My name is Khairul Hazlan, MFIT coordinator, and colleagues from UNESCO Jakarta, Ms. Felicia Angelina, Mr. Gani Mulya, and Mr. Cipta Yamato Sanda. Today, we will highlight on the utilization of smart knowledge for localizing the SDGs. We proudly present Professor Shahbaz, the Director of the UNESCO Regional Science Bureau for Asia and the Pacific, as the moderator, and our guest speaker, Dr. Anthony Sales, CESO 3, Regional Director of the Department of Science and Technology 11, Davao, Philippines. We are ready to take your questions through the Q&A space and comments at our Facebook page. Professor Shahbaz, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Hazlan. It's really a wonderful day to meet a friend, which is my friend for almost more than 20 years. Dr. Anthony Sales is a great supporter of UNESCO, is a great supporter of promoting science, technology, and innovation at the grassroots level, and especially how can we achieve sustainable development working together all the way to the political systems, national systems, then to the global levels. So there is no other appropriate person than Dr. Sales to talk about today's topic, which is about smart knowledge for localizing SDGs. Before we begin, for those colleagues who don't know what SDGs are, these are Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them, with many targets, and they are binding on the nations which are more developed or highly developed, or nations who are developing, or nations who are least developed. So we have to work together for the whole of the world, and they are owned by all of us. So to change our life, we need to achieve those sustainable development goals, like making sure there is no hunger, making sure everyone gets a job, making sure we have education, we have water supplies, we have decent environment, and making sure we're looking after the assets of this earth for us and for the future generation. We are dealing with issues like climate change, and we promote international cooperation. So that's our context today. Dr. Sales, can you please help us understand, first of all, these two terms, the smart knowledge and localizing SDGs? What do you mean by smart knowledge?
First of all, good afternoon, Dr. Khan. Thank you for the invitation. Well, smart knowledge can take on different definitions. Smart, by the word smart, can mean as something that would address certain problems, provide solutions to certain problems. But smart knowledge to us in the development sphere is really knowledge that would address local problems. And that is the reason why at the OST and the Help Davao Network, we focus our efforts on developing technologies that would address local problems and provide solutions within the context of communities and within the context of grassroots communities. So by that, that's how we define smart knowledge, Dr. Khan. Localizing as SDGs, it's important that we are able to translate policies and programs from the regional level to the national level into local actions. No? It's important that our communities are able to address their problems, and that is why most of our programs at Help Davao Network are focused on building resilience, resilient or regenerative communities. We call them resilient or regenerative communities, because what we want are that in any eventuality like the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, they are able to rise and build back their communities and provide answers to the problems associated with the pandemic. That's how we see smart knowledge for localizing SDGs, Dr. Khan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sales. So we have dealt basically with three definitions. One is smart knowledge. Smart knowledge does not have to be rocket science only. It's in the context of the local situation, knowledge which is appropriate to solve local problems. And then you have very smartly defined sustainable development goals, how they become relevant to the local people and for their life, for decent jobs and education. And thirdly, you have given us a very important concept today, which I'm sure many colleagues would love to understand more, and we will have another detailed session about that, is resilience. With situation like COVID, if we are under this extreme situation, how the society can bounce back and can come back to better future again. So all those three concepts are very, very important. I remember our journey together for almost 20 years. We have been trying to deal with a range of issues. Those issues relate to water, the issues relate to environment, like if you remember, there was a big challenge for aerial spraying of the pesticides. They also link with agriculture. And in the process, we have met many, many people. So I visited you many times in Davao, very beautiful city in Mindanao, the southern part of the Philippines. One of the keys for this smart knowledge for localizing SDGs is to work with everyone in the society. And the success I see is you are able to bring this knowledge to the politicians and to the NGOs, the local people. Can you please help us understand how such knowledge can be of interest to the politicians? And very importantly, for those colleagues who are watching from other parts of the world, the president of Philippines come also from Davao City, and you have worked very closely with him. So how do you bring those to the attention of the powers to be, and how do they understand this smart knowledge?
Dr. Khan, we always adhered to three approaches in bringing down high-level knowledge and innovations to the local level. The first approach is translation. I think it's important that we are able to translate our messages in a language that would be understandable, relatable to the local people. So that would require translation into the local language or dialect. And one very good example that I can cite where we have been successful in translating this high-level knowledge is the customized Iwrm guidelines, which we did in 2011, I think. So using the Iwrm guidelines developed by UNESCO as basis, we were able to customize these guidelines into one that would be applicable for Davao City and Davao region, and therefore making it more understandable and relatable to our local constituents. We were able to work with our local chief executives. I think that's the other strategy there, that when we deploy these tools and these approaches to the local government units, we should make champions out of these local chief executives or legislators. In the experience of Help Davao Network, we were able to engage a number of councilors, starting way back in the early 90s, starting with Councilor Avila, who was the chair of the Committee on Environment of the Davao City Council, up to this time with Councilor Pilar Braga, who is the chair of the Committee on Science and Technology in the Davao City Legislative Council. So these people, these champions, we call them champions, helped us in bringing our message to our local constituents. Well, if you look at the hierarchy and the channels of authority and communication at the local level, it's important that we engage these legislators, because by culture, people tend to gravitate more or to listen more to people who have authority, and this would include our legislators and local chief executives. The other approach is integration. When we say integration, we take into account the local conditions. So For some areas in Mindanao which are conflict affected or are very much particular about cultural norms, it's important that our messages are peace and culture sensitive. And so with our IWRM guidelines, we made sure that these are easily understandable, whether you are a Muslim or a Christian or a Luman or a native in Mindanao, so that you do not create more conflict and you are attuned to what is acceptable and what is understandable by wherever context you will introduce your approaches or your tools. So in essence, Dr. Khan, these are the approaches that we employ in all our development efforts in Mindanao and in Davao region. Translation into a language that is understandable. Deployment, taking into account the local conditions. And integration, we make sure that the approaches and the tools that you are introducing falls perfectly into a local situation.
That's very good. So this is really an example where you are bringing the global knowledge and enriching it with the local experience, also doing innovation, and in the process, knowledge helps the society move forward. So that's very important. That's where you have many of the champions, and the political leaders have become champions, and I witnessed that they have taken scientific information and turned into effective policies and implemented them as well. Let's talk to the next level of understanding of the smart knowledge today. And we have a project under Malaysia UNESCO cooperation program with you, and it has been one of the most highly successful projects. A project about bringing knowledge from multidisciplines and making it into a simple to understand scorecard under this project of bringing, if we have any project, you look into which SDGs it is delivering and then have a consensus on the scores and then evaluate the project. Can you please tell us about that project? And also, in my view, the greatest achievement from your work and work of colleagues there is that it was adopted by the regional board for assessing the project. So can you please give us some ideas about what a scorecard really means?
I'm happy that you asked this question, Dr. Khan, because we're delighted with the results that came out of this project. What we did was to develop we call it the Seti Scorecard, Science, Engineering, Technology, and Innovation Scorecard. With the support of UNESCO, we developed the scorecard with the engagement of as many stakeholders as possible, coming from the 5 sectors of society, including the media. You might be amazed at how helpful the media was in disseminating this scorecard to our stakeholders in the region. The Seti Scorecard is a tool that we can use to evaluate or assess projects and programs in terms of their contribution to the attainment of the SDGs or Sustainable Development Goals. It can be used as a pre-screening tool for programs and projects. If you intend to submit it for funding, for example, by the Department of Science and Technology or by the national government, it can be used as a pre-screening tool. So with the support, with the adoption of the Regional Development Council here in Davao region, all programs and projects that are submitted for budget, national budget, goes through this evaluation. And we now have a resolution requiring all state universities and colleges, national government agencies, local government units, and even GOCCs or government-owned and controlled corporations within the region to use this scorecard to evaluate programs and projects for budget. It can also be used for evaluation of an ongoing project, how far these programs and projects have contributed, or how much these programs and projects have contributed to the SDGs. And at the tail end, we can use it as a tool to evaluate the actual contributions of programs and projects to the SDGs. And we're happy that the other regional offices of the OST and other national government agencies, not only within the region, but also nationwide, are following suit. No? They're using this scorecard. And this is a very good example of local ideas feeding into policies and programs at the national, even regional level. I'm happy that UNESCO decided to adopt this scorecard for application in all Category 2 centers of UNESCO and other institutions in the Asia-Pacific region. So this is something that we are very proud of, and I think that can help us in really monitoring and evaluating the impact of our programs and projects to the SDGs.
Thank you, Dr. Salis. Already I see in the comments people are becoming excited. They are saying, can we get this scorecard? So the answer is certainly you can. The publication is there and it has been localized for the local context. And this scorecard, by the way, also is being used by the local governments in Indonesia, especially those local governments which are sharing the coastal cities. And there is a coral triangle which includes many other countries, including the Philippines. And so this has been really a big success, but also we are very thankful that you became a champion with colleagues from Davao to bring this idea. How do we bring the knowledge to the level that we can bring it into a scorecard and look into any project? Let's talk about a project to give an example to the colleagues that can illustrate that we can come from different backgrounds, but then we can converge whether we should proceed with this project or not. One of the most interesting projects I visited with you is about a treatment plant. You have been working with colleagues in Davao City. The treatment plant with links with the poultry industry and all the waste which comes from it, waste of different kinds. And then there is a land-based treatment system, and there is a process for purification, and then there is a safe discharge. If we take that project, there would be many different elements of the SDGs, and poultry is a very big thing for the Philippines because everybody wants to eat chicken. So can you please give us some idea about that kind of smart knowledge and the scorecard, and how can this then we take to a regional board for investment at a bigger scale?
Dr. Khan actually have had the opportunity to visit one of the projects. We call it the vertical halophyte filter system technology. And this is another example where high-level knowledge is translated into local action. This technology is actually used extensively in Europe, where particularly in the Netherlands, where hundreds or thousands maybe of halophyte filter units are being used for households and industries to treat wastewater. So what it does is it pumps wastewater from the septic tank, and the wastewater goes through several layers of different materials that can be sourced locally. And that is what makes this technology very sustainable, because the materials used for the construction of the filter bed, can be sourced locally. So examples of these are, that's why it's called halophyte, because it makes use of different varieties of plants as part of the filter. And it makes use of sand, gravel, even cocoa peat, no? A byproduct from the coconut industry. And we applied this to the poultry industry, as mentioned by Dr. Khan, to test whether it can minimize or reduce the number of pollutants from the poultry industry. And we're particular about BOD, biological oxygen demand, TSS, these are soluble solids in the wastewater, phosphates, nitrates, and sulfates. These are common pollutants that are being regulated by our Environmental Monitoring Bureau of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. So all industries, all enterprises that releases wastewater into the environment are monitored for these parameters. And we found that this filter, this technology, can reduce these pollutants by as much as 95%.
Very good.
Such that the wastewater, when released to canals and the rivers, our bodies of water, they are already compliant with PNR standards. And so far, we have applied this to beach resorts, slaughterhouses, food processing companies, households and communities, public toilets, and we have the data to back up, provide evidence that this technology really works. And Dr. Khan, what we're really after are communities of practice. By this, we envision communities of practice. It can be, civil society communities. It can be industrial ecosystems that makes use, adopts science, engineering, technology, and innovation as tools for planning, for decision making. They adopt technology so that they can address local problems. That's the vision of Help Davao. And with this technology, we hope, the vertical halide filter technology, we hope that our communities would be more resilient to disasters and to epidemics like the COVID.
Thank you very much. This is really a very relevant technology, and it can be viewed from different angles. One of them is about contamination, water management, then pollution. There is another angle also, which is about being inclusive with society, with both the genders, men and women, I would say all genders, discriminating no one. And you have also mentioned before that we should work across all faiths. So this is an example which can help us take forward. That's the purpose of the SDGs. Let's take one step more into understanding smart knowledge and linking with the young people, with the schools. I see whenever we go and visit the rivers with you or the community, there's so many young people interested in Philippines who want to learn science and technology. What is your magic to excite these young people?
Well, I think the secret really is, again, we go back to the approach on translation. And we're happy and we're fortunate to have within our network, the Help Davao network, and within the DOST family, young people who understands the language of young people, our millennials, and those who were born even after, the millennials. So you need to translate these messages in a language that would be understandable by the young people. And we've been quite successful in disseminating our Iwrm guidelines to out-of-school youth, Dr. Khan. A series of trainings and orientation, because we see the important role of the youth, our young professionals, our young scientists, and even out-of-school youth in advancing our agenda on disaster risk reduction and integrated water resources management. Because the youth make up a large portion of our population, and if you are able to persuade this section of the population to our side and make them champions and advocates of Iwrm and DRRM, then that would be a very good, accomplishment and help us translate our messages to the other sectors of society. To the teachers and the students, again, the approach on the pentahelix approach that we always advocate when we develop and implement programs, that we engage all sectors of the academe, industry, civil society, and the media always helps, because all these sectors can provide support in disseminating or relating the information that, or the knowledge that we want to disseminate to the public, to the different publics, because they have the resources, they have the language, they are adept with the language that are being used in the respective sectors. Dr. Khan.
Thank you very much. That's really an excellent way to link with society, exciting young people. I visited with you many times along the Davao River, from the National Eagle Center to people cleaning the river and putting trees on the way. And there is this old champion who is using his own boat to clean the river. So there is a lot of excitement. So maybe if I can phrase my last question about the program, Malaysia UNESCO Cooperation Program, which is about South-South cooperation in many of the science and technology, community engagement, young people. So you have visited many of our places and have interacted with scientists. You have given us example of bringing knowledge from the north as well as from south-south. So this scorecard. What can be the new directions for such a program, with the ownership right at the level in your region, in your city, to all the way to the member states of UNESCO? Can you please guide us? Where should we take our programs next? Dr. Salis?
Yeah, Dr. Khan, I think as a broker,
Yeah.
and second, as an integrator. As a broker, the platform can serve to provide the link between technology generators, technology developers on one side, that would include the academe, the government, research and development institutions, and even the private sector. Link them to the technology users and those that will commercialize these technologies and make them for public good, to address environmental and social problems. So as a broker, it's not just a matter of linking, but really proactively determining what are the technologies that would be needed in the future, not just present, but in the future. And therefore, this has to be linked to the vision and the objectives of the platform. So if it's the objective is to address the SDGs, then we might need to do some foresighting or forecasting of the technologies that would be needed 5, 10, or 15 years from now to address future problems. And so there would perhaps be a need to prioritize technologies that we should focus on at the MUCP platform. No? What are these technologies that should be prioritized to address urgent problems on the ground, and problems that will be needed, or technologies that will be needed to address future problems 5, 10, or 15 years, and to address the SDGs. Second, as an integrator, I think it's important that MUCP platform and other similar platforms would be able to look at what's available across and vertically, across agencies, partner agencies, and vertically to see that there is no duplication and overlap of programs and projects, so that we can maximize the benefits from available resources. In Help Davao Network, we make sure that we do a clear inventory of the resources that are available on the ground and see how these resources can complement. We are always particular about complementarity of programs and projects of different agencies and what is available at the national and even regional levels. In our efforts to integrate programs and projects, we saw the need to develop what we call Seti Ecosystems, science, engineering, technology, and innovation ecosystems, because we acknowledge that we cannot do this on our own. Help Davao and DOST cannot do this on our own. We need to partner, we need to collaborate with all other regional ecosystems for STI. And so now we have what we call the Mindanao Seti Ecosystems for 8 or 9 thematic areas, development areas that are aligned with the development corridors of Mindanao. So I think that's the secret, Dr. Khan, that we need to collaborate. I think that's the 17th SDG, collaboration not only at the regional level, but also at the local level.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Salis. Time flies really, and whenever we meet, it is so interesting to talk to you. So let me try to summarize. First of all, we congratulate you for leading this region, and especially based in Davao. You're doing a wonderful job with all the stakeholders. So we have learned from you the smart knowledge. It's not necessarily the rocket science, but the knowledge which is relevant for the local context for solving the problems which people are facing. And this knowledge has to help us with the big challenges of our time. So like water security, food security, the issues related to climate change, issues related to people's jobs. So you are doing all of that, bringing together. Then thank you for introducing this scorecard project, which is basically looking into a given project, which can be for any development purposes, but then you bring the lens of the SDGs, how it is delivering into individual SDGs, and you brought it to the level where the people from academia, the politicians, the people from civil society, they can all contribute to assessing a given project and the regional boards. And I congratulate you again for this scorecard will be used by many other regions, and certainly it is being used by many countries in ASEAN, and it's available for anyone who would like to try, would like to improve. And you are one of the experts in the system, very generous to share your ideas. Then we have learned also from an example of a project which you have highlighted today for dealing with a key area of our society. How do we deal with the waste coming out of a poultry? So while the knowledge comes from the north, you have enriched it, those helophytes, the plants which can treat this with the local conditions. The plants are local, the knowledge then becomes localized. You have introduced to us translation to local concept, then also bringing the champions and in the implementation and integrating it with the whole of society. And the role of youth, which is very, very important, and thinking in foresight. So that's really your message, which I like, which we need to work with the new MUCP, look into what the problems are coming. So today as we meet, you are wearing a mask because we have this pandemic, COVID. And to go beyond COVID to build this resilience, you also introduced, we need to be looking into future now. So I am sitting in a place where there is nobody other than me, so I can afford to not wear a mask. But thank you for appearing in this interview with us. So any colleagues who would like to follow up with questions to Dr. Salis, he's a very generous person. He can answer your questions through live Facebook, question answers here, or as you get a certificate, you can ask a question to Dr. Salis or in the chat box. So with that, we thank you, Dr. Salis, again for your excellent contributions over long period of time, more than 20 years, to help Davao Network, Malaysia UNESCO Cooperation Program now, and our science and technology initiatives in the region. We look forward to continue to work with you, and we look forward also for this COVID to go away and we work together looking into future and continue to localize our knowledge for a better society. Thank you. Thank you. Hazlan.
Thank you, Professor Shahbaz and Dr. Seti Salis, and to all participants who have joined this event. For the next sessions on our Sustainable Insight, we are pleased to have Dr. Iwrm, CEO and Program Director of the Mobius Foundation, this coming Thursday on 23rd July 2020 at 12 noon Jakarta time. The next session will focus on post-COVID climate Climate Justice, Reaching the Unreachable. For further information on this, please see the information on the chat room and our social media pages. If you wish to receive the certificate of this webinar today, please go to the link at the chat box and answer a few questions. We keep this form open 60 minutes from now. We wish you a good day, stay safe, and see you all soon next Thursday. Thank you.